This episode was originally recorded on October 30th, 2018. To ensure you stay updated with all the latest Command Control Power episodes and never miss out on valuable insights, visit patreon.com/CMDCTRLPWR. By subscribing, you'll unlock exclusive new content packed with in-depth strategies and practical tips to elevate your managed service provider practice. Don't miss this opportunity to gain greater expertise.
So I have a correction from a listener. Justin Wattenbarger wrote in regarding the pronunciation of Mojave. And apparently I've been 100% wrong across the board on Apple's new OS. It's 10.14 Mojave. And apparently I've been saying Mojave. And also, I had noted this previously, but I had been misspelling it. Obviously, that doesn't come through over the air, but it does come through when I write an email to a client and spell it totally wrong with the H instead of a J. I'm currently in California, so I have no right to make these kinds of mistakes. So I really appreciate the correction from Justin Wattenbarger. And of course, now that I'm thanking him for his correction on my pronunciation, I hope this does not invite another correction on how to pronounce his last name. But thank you, Justin, for that correction.
You know why I'm mad about that, Joe, is because I was pronouncing it Mojave. And then on that show you and I were recording, you started saying Mojave. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm wrong. So I started saying Mojave as well on that show. And then we both got dinged for it.
And Jerry, I don't know where you come across on this, but are you going to come clean on any pronunciation missteps or anything like that?
Well, I think I liked the way you said Mojave. It was very effete and very New Englandy. Lovey, Daisy and I are going to go to the yacht club and look at the Indian Mojave paintings.
What are you, Mr. Howell?
It's exactly the character I was thinking of. I was going to say I take all my pronunciations from the rich guy on Gilligan's Island. That's the reference.
No, I think you should keep it. That's my feeling.
Mojave. Well, I have a feature request now for Joe's feature request corner for maybe not Mojave, but maybe for Mojave, which would be the 10.15 version. But in all seriousness, wouldn't this be great? You have an iCloud family, right? You're using iCloud family sharing. And you have your favorites, and you have iCloud Photo Library enabled on, say, 2 members of the family. You have your favorites. Wouldn't it be nice if you could check a box to have shared favorites between, members of a family?
Yes. And why isn't that a thing already?
Yeah, shouldn't that be a thing? Either maybe make all my favorites shared favorites, or, create a new album called Shared Favorites or something like that, where, whenever you favorite a new photo, it goes into shared favorites. I'm not sure exactly what I'm asking for here, but some kind of way to easily share photos, like full-fledged, because you can do this with iCloud shared albums, but it's not quite the same thing because I don't know if they're treated exactly the same, like full resolution, all metadata and things like that. So I just think a way to have my favorites shared as if I were airdropping them with other members of the family. Ashley and I favorite different photos as we're out on the same trips and looking at the same things. It would be really nice just to have a shared collection of those favorite photos from, wherever we are.
Apple would tell you to make a folder called Favorites and put all your favorites in there and share them with Ashley.
Yeah, I could do that, a shared album in iCloud, but I'm not quite sure. I mean, maybe I should research that further and see if there'd be any downside. I kind of feel like the photos are not necessarily full resolution and not necessarily downloaded at full quality automatically. But maybe I'm wrong. I just think also maybe there's room for just an automatic option where you click favorite and it just shares it, as opposed to creating an album and manually dragging it and stuff too.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
No, you're asking too much, man.
So first, I'd like to welcome Weldon Dodd of Rewind Tech to the show. Welcome, Weldon.
Hey, thank you. It's good to be back again.
You're there in person with Sam, although I guess not in the same room. Otherwise, we'd be having some audio echoing issues, I imagine. But you're in the same town, or more accurately, Sam is in your hometown of Denver. Is that right?
Yeah, Sam could tell you more, but he came out here for a gig, and so we're hosting him at our office here in Centennial, just south of Denver.
Just to lead in here before we get to that, I wanted to start off with a pop quiz, blast from the past. We haven't had a pop quiz on Command Control Power in quite a while, but I know it's Jerry and Sam's favorite thing. I would not know the answer to this question if somebody popped me with this quiz, but I encountered this the other day, and I thought I'd just throw it out there. Does anybody know what 1e100.net is?
No, I'm out.
I'm out.
Me too.
I would not expect anybody to know this. I can't even remember how I encountered this exactly. It was a property owned by Google, and it's something that all of their domains actually use, I guess, as the reverse DNS, essentially. I'll just actually quote from Google now. 1e100.net is a Google-owned domain name used to identify servers in our network. So at some point, they sort of consolidated into using this domain as the corresponding host name of every IP address that they use, essentially. The reason that this is significant and matches up with Google is that 1e to the 100 is scientific notation for a Google, which is their the source of their name.
Ooh, very cool.
I can't remember how I encountered that, but I thought, just throw it out there. I had never seen it before, so I thought it was pretty interesting.
Doesn't Google have that kind of distinction? Weren't they, when they were auctioning off some of the bandwidth spectrums, didn't Google put in some bid number that had some significance as well?
Oh, that's such a good point. Yeah, I think they did. I think you're right about that.
Pretty esoteric, but kind of unusual.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember like John Gruber remarking on that and saying like, that's really funny, Google, and everything, but like you lost the
right.
the auction. Something like that. Like, it's clever, but like you also it didn't work, So, and just in case we get any corrections here, I should clarify what actually one Google is in case I misspoke there. So it's 10 to the 100 power, basically. That's one Google. So it's like 10 followed by 100 zeros, something like that.
Interesting. I want to ask Weldon. Now, Weldon, rumor has it that when Sam goes out on these jobs and he's not in Stamford, Connecticut, he's too thrifty to get a hotel room and he actually sleeps just underneath the desk. Have you seen any sign of that?
No, actually, Sam set up in a nice place here in Denver, so
okay. You haven't seen a sleeping bag underneath the desk? Okay, all right. Just had to. You can neither confirm nor deny, but
he looks freshly rested every morning, showered, clean.
Okay,
yeah, so.
All right.
Did hear rumors that Sam used his per diem that we give him as part of command control power. He saves that and sleeps on the street.
I have a per diem.
Jerry, you haven't been sending Sam his per diem?
You guys owe me a lot of back pay at this point then.
Right. Out there representing the show in various towns. So yeah, what is this gig you're up to there in Weldon's hometown of Denver, trying to horn in on his business there?
No, man, I was fully invited. I'm teaching a Jamf 200 gig in his training facility, which is pretty damn awesome, by the way. I've already told him this myself, but it's a really nice training center, a lot of space, and full class for people taking the Jamf 200. So he's hosting me here. I have nice accommodations that I'm put up in. So this is a pretty sweet week out in Denver. I attempted to go for a run last night, and he told me some good trails to take on, and I completely did not account for the altitude change. And I felt like someone was pressing on my chest the entire run. You can feel that difference. I don't know if you guys have ever been out here and attempted that, like exercising out in this altitude, but it's really, you can notice that difference right away.
Yeah, it works in the opposite direction too. When you get down to sea level, you can really feel that you have extra room to run. I spent a couple weeks in Houston a while back, and I went out and played Pickup Ultimate almost every night, and it was great. Play for 2 hours or something. I felt like I could go for another 2. It's super humid and it's really dry here. I'd be drenched in sweat, but you could run for days.
So what happens to the sports teams? I mean, do they have a distinct advantage when they play away, or when they play at home, rather, when people come to their field?
I don't know all the details, but I know a lot of teams will actually travel a day early to come out here and try to get acclimated, but I don't know.
Sam, maybe you could save some of your command control power money and buy an altitude tent. So when you know you're going to go see Weldon, you could sleep in that couple weeks leading up so you're ready.
Like I said, I'm not aware of any money, but now I demand it.
So I guess that's why they call it the Mile High City of Denver. And I'm wondering now, Sam, are you part of the Mile High Jamf Club, having taught a class of a mile altitude there? I
am not, no. We'll leave it at that. But no
comment.
Yeah. It's been a good week here, man. This is a cool spot. I've been having a good time. Met his great family, and everyone's nice in this area. So it's been good.
So Weldon, what's going on with your business? Can you give us, an update? I guess you have a training facility there that Sam is super impressed with, and what's your day-to-day like?
Yeah, Sam and I were just talking about this. About half of our business is training and doing different things there. The other half of the business is managed services. We're pretty much gotten rid of break-fix customers and small customers. Almost everybody we work with really is on a contract. For the most part, there's a couple guys that work for me, and they take care of the day-to-day. I just had one quit. He got a good job and moved on. I was happy for him to get a good opportunity. Left us a little short, and so that means that I have to cover a little more of the day-to-day, which is fine, except when we have things like a class going on and I'm here, and then next week I'm away at JNUC, and so it's going to be a little bit tough without that extra person, but we'll try to make do.
Yeah, I've been feeling Sam is pretty familiar with that game there, with all the traveling you do and trying to cover everything back home when you're on the road and all. And you've grown your team, and I know you have coverage now, but I'm sure you can relate to that, can't you, Sam?
I'm going through a process where I'm thinking about hiring again. And at that cusp, when your business is at that level, it's like, well, can I afford someone new? Should I bring in someone new? And you kind of have to take that leap of faith at times to just say, I'm going to go for it and see how it works. I'm at that point right now where we do need some help. And maybe I'll just steal one of your guys, Joe, since some of those guys are pretty good. And I'll just, when the cat's away, I'll roam over to the office and have a couple of chat with some people.
Nice. Well, I'll just put it out there for listeners. Anybody who, whatever Sam's offer is, I'll give you 10% more, and just give me a call. So,
I actually had a question for you guys. Last week, you were talking a little bit about Tidbit's content network and whether or not you should make that required reading for the people on your team. But I was wondering, what else do you guys do to help bring people on board and get them up to speed with your team and do the kinds of training and things that you need to do with new hires?
Well, I mean, thankfully, I've had some practice onboarding because it was brand new to me. I mean, the concept of like having a plan to bring someone on board, it wasn't exactly an afterthought, but it's one of those just like additional things you have to do. I mean, finding somebody is hard enough, negotiating, all of that, not only that, but coming up with their salary and so on. Like Sam was describing, that's all, those are some of the biggest challenges. But then once you've sealed the deal and you're ready to, bring somebody onto your team, actually having like a process for that, an onboarding process, is really important. And if you don't have that, it's just kind of a little bit, they get started off on a little bit of a faulty kind of footing where maybe they don't feel quite welcome to the team. And, maybe they don't quite know your procedures and processes, and they don't even know necessarily like where your favorite restaurants are in the neighborhood to grab some lunch or whatever. And so there's like a lot of little details like that we worked out just through trial and error. By no means do we have a very clear idea of this, but we have documented as we've gone along everything from individual setup of their account, just all the things that they need to kind of have access to your systems and services, recapping things like, just basic facts about the company that they should know. We put together like kind of a template for the day. We like to bring people on in the morning and have some breakfast together. And we even do a little presentation where we welcome them to the team. We kind of show them a little bit about who the other members of the team are, the history of the company. It's kind of a fun opportunity to play around with Keynote for me, to set that all up and just have some fun with it and lead them through it. And then we have them do their paperwork and get them kind of like signed on officially to, take copies of whatever we need. And then we all go to lunch together. So we kind of like have this really easy onboarding process to get them to become part of the personal side of joining our team and just kind of ease them into it. And I mean, that's the general outline of our plan, but I'm really curious what you've done, Sam and Weldon. It sounds like you've got a nice team there. So do you have anything to add to that as well?
Well, for me, I know that one of the aspects of it is also some kind of formalized training and or certification. Advantage of being a trainer or having training center is if we want them to take the 101, we can do it internally. And we can give them the time to then take the test and get certified. And I think that's, if they're not already certified, because I know you've probably brought on some people that are, it's helpful to then validate their knowledge set and not have to spend a lot of dough to get that done. So that helps. But yeah, I've started to put together a little new employee packet too, where I have a couple of different items, like whether it be an NDA or anything like that, where I'm starting to get bit more formalized, as I feel like, all right, I have kind of a legit business. I should probably make this a more formalized process. But yeah, so there's like new employee packet, there's training, but I don't do the whole breakfast and lunch thing, man. Sounds like you really schmooze them on day one. Then you hit them with day two and they're like, oh my God, what did I do?
Remember, guys, breakfast and lunch plus 10% over whatever Sam's paying you. Offers on the table.
But you got to bear in mind,
Nice
Sam, that just about a week later he lets them go. So, it's a short-lived honeymoon.
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, I will say that the certification is a great point. We've had to train the people we've brought on board, even when they have experience and so on, they don't always have the certifications, even if they, sort of could qualify. So they have to study, and we don't have the luxury of a training facility or the budget to kind of send them out to classes. Training time actually represents a significant investment of time. On our side, the money that we're paying them basically to just do self-study, and then the cost of tests and things like that. It's all part of it. Definitely adds up. I think that's a really good point to sort of require that people will have a certain minimum level of qualifications and certainly certifications as well. So I guess it's different for you guys because you could just kind of put them through all your, whatever tests you have coming up, 101, 201, the Mile High Jamf Club, and just,
that's unofficial.
Get them fully onboarded. Right.
We got our show title.
Yeah, I've been lucky with the last, 2-3 people that I've hired where they've come to me with pretty good background and pretty good skill set already. 2 of them worked for Apple Retail at the Genius Bar. One of them was doing the job already, and we acquired the customer and him along with it. So we didn't have to do a lot of upfront training on foundational skills, but there was still a lot to do with specific processes and troubleshooting around different applications that each customer had. I felt a little disorganized because I didn't have a great method for training all these things. We had some documentation, but I started to realize, that I wrote the documentation for myself. And so it wasn't a great resource for bringing in somebody cold to teach them, how to do it. And so I spent a lot of time just having them shadow me for the first couple of weeks where we really did everything together. And, that was sort of our training program, if you will, was, look, let's just go out to the customer and visit alongside, and we'll do everything together. You can watch me, and then you can do it, and I'll be there with you to help you. And that worked pretty well.
If I could add to that documentation piece too, because I know that feeling of, okay, if you're a one-man show for a while, now you have somebody else. A lot of the stuff's in your head or random notes that are in your computer. To help with that documentation process, what I did early on was when I brought Matt on, I said, okay, well, we don't have a process for this, but you're going to shadow me, like you said, Weldon. And then I said, I want you to document these steps. So he basically helped us build our documentation, and I could also critique the way he does that and say, this is the way we prefer to do it. So it helped. It kind of killed 2 birds with one stone in that effect, in that we got him to know how to document procedures, and he helped build our knowledge base.
That's a really good point. I mean, the documentation is huge, and that brings to mind some things we hadn't really thought of before our first few hires. Things that became clear that maybe we had even taken for granted or assumed went without saying. And we literally will say this in presentations now. Maybe some of this seems like it should go without saying, but we've learned that it doesn't go without saying. For example, things that are really important to us: correct spelling and grammar. That's just huge. That's just a big part of what we do. A consistent writing style, you have to be able to kind of follow our format for note taking, for documentation, following Apple's style guide. We have links to this stuff that we will provide for employees. We expect them to be able to follow this stuff. And I mean, just going down the list, accuracy, precision, clarity, these things are really important. We have all these different qualities documented as expectations that are very explicit. We then realize well, it's one thing to kind of say, we need you to do this stuff. It's another thing to see what someone's abilities are or just tendencies. You guys both pointed out the only way to really figure that out is to have somebody shadow you, one way or another. And we have an example of actually one specific client who has had some really, really astute feedback on a few people, positive and negative. We actually said to her, in all seriousness, we would like to make you part of our hiring process. Sending a potential hire to this client's home business would actually be maybe part of our process. We would send them there for free. She gets a free consultation out of it, for better or worse. We get some feedback from her about, that person's abilities and qualities and things. And we see then the result of that is quality of their documentation and how they handle different requests and things. And, you can learn a lot, not only from having them shadow you, but from having them actually go out on site. I'm not sure the logistics of liability and pay and different things like that, but I'm sure you could just have a really simple NDA kind of thing. And just you could pay them hourly just to go and do that as a contract. And then you get some real world experience with the person. I think that's invaluable when you're considering, hiring somebody for the kinds of salaries that a, technology consultant will earn.
Did you actually do that? Did you have the client interview anybody?
Not yet. This is a repeating pattern where she has given us a lot of really good feedback, unsolicited, which is even more valuable. So we haven't had a chance to put this into practice yet. But yeah, I think that will honestly be part of our process.
Yeah, that's interesting. It just made me think about something else. It's semi-related, that my youngest son is in the special ed program at the elementary school. And when it was time for them to hire a new special ed leader for that building, they actually invited a few parents to come and sit in on interviews with their final candidates. And so, I was one of 2 or 3 parents that interviewed teachers for our local public school. It was interesting. I was kind of flattered to be included. But also for me, sitting on that side of the table, I felt a lot more invested in the success of this new teacher that we selected, because, I had seen the other candidates and seen who was up for that position. Of course, they're going to be working with my child, so I was invested that way as well. But, it gave me a different sense of ownership. That'd be really interesting to include clients or customers in that process, because I think it might help them feel more invested in the relationship with you and feel invested in the success of working together with people on your team, instead of maybe just lobbing complaints over email about how so-and-so doesn't do things the way they like.
Yeah, it's a really good point. That gives them a stake in it and shows them that, you really do respect their, their perspective and all. So it is a good way to maybe just further that relationship with certain key clients. I mean, some clients maybe wouldn't give you necessarily the best feedback. So I think you have to be careful about who you ask, to put in that room.
I find that pretty interesting myself. I mean, I'd have to think of who that client in my list would be that I could trust, and also that would want the burden. It sounds like she's very open to this and gave you unsolicited advice. But if you are calling upon a client to have this happen, it's definitely a little bit of a burden on them, especially if they don't do the greatest job. That's an interesting perspective to take on that, to use the clients for that.
Well, Sam, I'd be glad to send any of your potential candidates to my clients anytime. So just pass their names along.
I'm going to use this as an opportunity because I got a bone to pick with you. You guys referred someone to me that I can't even explain is an absolute lunatic. And now I can't shake this person. A paranoid person that thinks a lot of things are happening to their computer. And
sounds like somebody I referred to Joe a little while ago.
Yeah, probably got passed down the line. Right.
So Weldon, I got a perfect client for you if you have time to talk about.
Our clients tend to move. They tend to move west. It starts at Jerry's and up in Madison and kind of moves through Norwalk and then out to Denver, and then pretty soon they're out to sea at some point.
Okay, we have to talk offline, because if this came this way from Jerry to you and you to me, it's going to be hysterical.
This brings up a bigger question, too, about, how do you politely decline to engage with new clients when you don't want to necessarily make them someone else's problem, especially a respected, colleague. I wouldn't knowingly pass you somebody who is a real trouble source without giving you fair warning. Yeah, exactly. I mean, Jerry might do that, but I'm just
Well, anytime I hear the word, I think I've been hacked, I just tell them I wish them luck and we're not insured for that. Sorry.
Oh, that's a good one.
It is, actually. All jokes aside, I'm not sure if there's something clinically wrong with this person, and I wouldn't joke about that at all. But the feeling I'm getting is there's a lot going on there that I definitely know, actually, at this point, that I can't help with, or that we can't help with. But the problem right now is this person won't let go of us. we're trying to politely say, we're not the best fit for you. And I've received 3 phone calls from that person today after saying that. So I'm like stuck in a weird spot where I'm like, okay, now do I have to stop being polite, or what do I do now to shake this client that I clearly can't help? And so I'm dealing with that difficulty right now.
So we've been very selective about the clients we take on because we've just jammed with keeping up with existing demand. But, and it sounds like such a great problem to have, but it's not exactly like it's always a struggle because keeping up with demand is the name of the game, and you get to be slightly too busy. But like you're describing before, Sam, you're maybe not busy enough to actually hire that next person. And that's kind of where we're at. So our solution has been trying to just be very, very selective about who we engage with.
I like that answer, Jerry.
Sometimes they're like, why are you refusing? And then at that point, if in fact you really find that this is a bad match, you have to really put your tail between your legs and say something like, we would love to help you, but based on what you've described, we are really not experts in that particular field. Wish you the best of luck and hope you find someone who's a good match for you, and we would love to help you. And the other thing is, we're not insured for this. So
it's like, even if we wanted to help you, we're just, legally, my hands are tied.
Exactly.
So, Weldon, how is that in Denver? I don't know the market there, but, do you have relationships with colleagues where you kind of pass referrals around like that at all? Do you find yourself in that position where you can't or won't take someone on for whatever reason, and, you kind of have a person who's willing to receive them, or how does that work for you?
We have a really good relationship with Amy McKnight at the Mac Spa here in town, and her business is a little more consumer focused than ours. And so whenever we get calls from people that want some help at home, we send all of them over to her. She has a really neat setup. They've got a repair shop as well. They do training and classes that are more focused on consumer, how to put together a photo book or whatever, right? So she'll have a little seminar at her office where people can come in and learn how to do that together. Yeah, that's been a pretty good relationship. And then our business is really more focused on enterprise and education, schools and private or charter schools and school districts, things like that.
Now, Weldon, you mentioned focusing on managed services, and it sounded like you made a transition at some point to be almost exclusively managed services. Is that right? And how did you sort of make that transition to, those kinds of enterprise clients, and specifically, actually offering your services as managed services in that way?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's the truth is, when I started the business, I would take any work that came to me. If someone wanted me to paint their house, if they were willing to pay my hourly rate, I'd climb up on the ladder and paint the side of their house. But as the business grew and we got busier, I was doing training, but the opportunity came up for us to become the training center. So we took that and added that to the business, and really just it came about that I really felt like we needed to focus on what we were good at, and that if we tried to, personally, if I tried to continue to sort of be jack of all trades and do home users and, high net worth individuals and small business and education and enterprise and everything else, that I was afraid of falling into a trap where I wasn't going to be particularly great at any of it. And so with training and whatnot, it really kind of moved the business more towards enterprise and working with other admins. And so that's where we decided to focus. It was hard. It was a hard transition because there was a time when, I had to say no to work at moments when I really could have used a little bit of extra money. It would have been great to have a little bit of extra business, but it just got to the point where I saw it as a distraction, and I really wanted to focus on what we were doing around, fully managed offering. I don't know if we're there yet. We still have a lot of work to do. My goal is I want to be excellent at whatever we do. I think that requires saying no, in the sense that you have to focus on the things where you can really add value and where you can be best. Well, another example. In the past, I worked for Microsoft for a while. I did some large Active Directory projects, and I worked for Cisco. In that role, I worked with cellular phone companies on network management systems. So I have a pretty deep background in doing AD stuff, pretty good background in doing network management for large enterprise, big network, carrier scale networks. No one else on my team can do that. So I took a couple gigs doing like Wi-Fi surveys and Wi-Fi planning and whatnot, which I'm capable of doing, but I didn't have anybody else on the team that could support me in that role. And so I actually decided to back away from that because I didn't feel like as an organization we could really serve that customer, the right way. So it's kind of a long answer to what you're saying, but just over time, I really tried to identify what I thought we could be good at, where we would add value, and then just trying to be ruthless about focusing on that so we don't get too far outside the wheelhouse, and instead we're pulling all our resources together in the same direction so that we can be I mean, ideally we'll get there at some point, but ideally we want to be awesome at what we do.
Well, where I'm impressed is the fact that, as you mentioned, you were very honest in saying there were times when you could have used the money, but you said no because you were dedicated to making yourself strictly MSP. And that seems to me to be a difficult task as you're running a business and you're saying, I'm going to stick to my guns because you don't know what's going to happen next month. And so that to me is something that not all people can accomplish. Let's put it that way. But I would also say I was curious about one thing that you took upon with this in saying no to gigs and then passing on. How did you establish your relationship with the MaxBot to make that happen? And I don't know if it's a relationship of back and forth where they also give you stuff that might be out of their wheelhouse. But the guys at the MaxBot are friends of the show as well, so I completely forgot they were in Denver. But how did that relationship get started where you were passing along clients their way?
It happened over time as we got to know each other. Amy and I went to a few of the same conferences and spent time chatting and talking. We had a couple lunches together just to get to know each other better and understand what each other were doing. And so I think once we had sort of that comfort level and understanding of what her business was about and what ours was about, that made it a lot simpler. A lot of it just comes down to the fact that Amy is just an awesome person. And so if it would have been different, right? If we didn't get along on a personal level, if there was some friction or personalities didn't match, it would make it a lot harder, even if the business was a good match for reciprocal referrals. We get along, we understand each other, and it's been a comfortable working relationship.
There is a business that's in the same town as Joe and not too far from Sam, and it's very difficult to not look at a business as an adversary. They're not consultants, they're a retail store, but immediately you feel like they're taking away some of your business. It's very difficult to turn that corner and to look at them in a slightly different way and see how this particular business can help you rather than just drive business away from yours.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, it is really, instinctual to kind of see like a new player as a threat potentially who is now competing for the same business potentially. And and then to take that and to evolve that perspective into something that could be mutually beneficial, I think is really, is really great attitude because you do want to focus. I mean, that's a really insightful point that you bring up, Weldon, to focus on what you do well, because the goal, as you said, is to do something really well. And the only way you can really do that is to focus on specific areas where you can add value. That means saying no. And that's sort of counter to the reflexive habit you just form when you're starting out. Like you were saying, you might climb a ladder and paint a wall, for the hourly rate. If they're going to pay you the rate, I mean, you'll do almost anything when you're just starting out. And to break that habit and to say, no to certain things is really tough. And I remember going through that. I mean, it took me probably way too many years to start to really think about what the request was and to consider, is this something that, we are going to be able to do well? And that's also a good point you made about having the team structure around it. Even if it's something you might want to do, if you're the only one who knows how to do it, maybe that's not something you just generally offer. For example, we focus on Mac and we don't do Windows.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true around here. There's lots of shops that'll do Windows support. It's just not worth it for us to try to compete with them. If we run across a customer that's primarily Windows, we'll tell them that we're not a good fit. They should go look for somebody else. And it's not that we can't do a good job. It's not that we couldn't do it, but we just don't have much to offer that makes us special in that area. Where on the Mac side, we've got a lot of relationships with lots of companies that I think really do make our offering really competitive here in town in terms of what we can bring to the table. If someone needs top-notch Mac support, we can do that. If they want Windows support, we're just average. I don't really want to be average, I guess.
Speaking of that on the Windows side, not to delve into it too much, but I have one client really where there's so much on the Windows side, and we kind of fell into that one because we supported their main office that was Mac-based, and then it turned out to be a much larger client, which I've talked about in the past. But that's happening again now, and I'm kind of torn as to what to do. My partner, Jay, had been working with family for quite some time over the years and with all their Macs in their house and stuff. As it turned out, she owned a business, quite a large business that was all PC-based, but it never amounted to anything. We never talked about it, never went there. He always worked on the home stuff. And then situations have changed that required them to start looking again. And now we're in the mix for this all-PC company, and we have a long-standing relationship with the owners on a personal level. So it's like, I don't know if I want to be, as Weldon said, just average with a client like this, because I don't think we're experts at it. I think we're okay. It's a nice-sized client. What do I do? It goes back to your point, Weldon, where it was like you said no to some gigs because you were on that specific path. And it stands to reason I should probably say no to that because I don't think we would do it really, really well. But then there's that money aspect. So it tears me apart, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I still don't.
Yeah, we just took a new customer on this month, and they're about half Mac, half Windows at this point. But, up front, part of the reason they were looking for a new IT partner was that they want to transition their entire business over to Mac. And they're looking to do that in the first quarter of next year. And so that was a scenario where I felt like, okay, even though there's a fair bit of Windows support involved here, there's kind of a time limit on it. It's 4 or 5 months maybe. And they need help transitioning their existing Windows users over to Mac. And so we can do some things around helping with that I thought it made sense. So we added that customer on, and it's been good so far, and I think it'll be great. But if they had told me that, no, we really need to keep the Windows presence around, and this is something that we're committed to, we just have a couple people that have Mac, I don't know. I certainly would have thought about it longer.
Well, then I wanted to circle back on a point earlier about, making the transition, saying no to clients that, have perfectly valid requests that you just don't focus on, and talk more specifically also about how you made the transition to the billing side of things. So presuming you had clients fully operational, work for them that was totally in your wheelhouse, as you transitioned your business to offer fully managed services, how did the conversations change about things would be billed out? And did you have to go through and sell your services to each of your clients at some point to get them on board with your presumably monthly plans?
We've been adding new customers for the last 3 or 4 years as MSP customers on an annual contract. Over time, we've kept a couple sort of legacy customers around that have been with me for 10 years or whatever and are used to the hourly model. And some of them I really like. I enjoy working with them. They're good customers. They pay relatively quickly, all those good things. There was one customer I'm thinking of in particular that was really a hard sell. He did not want to add another monthly bill to his business. It's kind of a small 5-6 people. They're a sales rep group. He was just dead set. They just bought new computers. They'd had computers for, I think, 5 years or something. They decided to buy all new computers for everybody. So he just went out and laid out cash for 5 or 6 brand new top-of-the-line 15-inch MacBook Pros and updated software and everything else. Dead set against a lease because he didn't want a monthly payment. He was super reluctant to go with Office 365 because it was a monthly payment. Throughout, he did not want to transition our business to a monthly model. We finally got him switched over just this year. Really what it came down to was he saw the value in the relationship. He really has, over the last 8-10 years that we've been working together, considers me and some of the other guys on my team part of their company, an advisor to their company. So they wanted to maintain that relationship. And so it lines up pretty well with the way we sell it. We focus on the idea that we want our interests to be aligned with yours. You want everything to work so that you can be efficient and productive and do everything you need to do. We want everything to work and go smoothly, because if everything's working and then we can optimize our time, we're more profitable. Then we both want the same thing. And we think that's a benefit. We want everything to work really smoothly. That's exactly what you want. In addition, we set up quarterly strategy meetings so that we can talk about what their technology needs are, where they need to go, that kind of thing. That combination, I think, really helped frame the picture for him. And so he was willing to sign on and do a contract with us instead of just break fix. It kind of worked out where he was going to spend a whole bunch of money to set up all these new computers. And so, I worked in a break where, look, if you sign on, right, we'll reduce the cost of this project that you've got to set up all these new computers. And so it'll work out well for you in the long run. And he was willing to sign up. But it took a long time.
Yeah, that's such a great feeling when that client eventually turns the corner. We recently went through that with some Yankees up here who were very close to the vest with their money and doling anything out. Finally, they see the value in something you can provide beyond just coming in there to be the flat tire fixer. That's such a really wonderful feeling to have. And at the same time, this past week, we did a presentation over the phone to a company. But it's always difficult to present a managed service program to a client in person or over the phone when the client is conflating different things. Like they're thinking about, we've got to upgrade our Macs. And does your plan include us upgrading the Macs? And you have to say, no. We're talking about patch management for the most part, and making sure that once you get your hardware, that it's maintained and runs smoothly. You don't have interruptions in your business on a daily basis. So sometimes it's very difficult because the client just looks at it as my computer. I need a new screen. Can you help me with my new screen? And they don't really see the value a lot of times in managed service. And that's a tough sell.
It is a really good point. And you want to avoid getting yourself into trouble and making promises you can't keep, which is sort of counter to standard sales practice, I feel like. Oftentimes clients go through this where they're being promised anything they ask for. The salesperson will say yes, yes, and yes. They find out only through reviewing those promises with you, the technologist, that a lot of it's technically not possible and so on. And so when you're selling your own services and they're asking you, well, can you do this? And is this included? And, if you have to say no to too many of those questions, it's hard to then redeem the value. But, if you can position it as something that is helping them sort of maintain status quo and just keep things running smoothly, what I've found is that's the benefit of including a budget for hours in our monthly plans and discounting the hourly rate for everything else. So it's like, sure, we can do anything you want. It's you can use this time however you see fit to some extent. Of course, we're going to make our recommendations, and some more strongly than others. That's our job. If you have a budget of time to spend on, your brand new Mac setup or whatever, great, especially if it's at our recommendation. And if you don't have the budget of time, you get the discount. You get the hourly rate discount on all that stuff that goes over for those, whether you want to pitch it as a project or just, it's just sort of like an hourly thing in general. I don't know if you'd call it a hybrid approach. That's where I found the strength in just, sort of including a budget of time and being very explicit about what our packages include. Whereas I think other consultants have, tried to meet the client's needs through some magic number. I think, Sam, you've used that term before, right? The magic number approach to selling your services.
Yeah, not showing them all the math that goes on behind it, because then they start to ask too many questions.
Well, because, that's part of that difficulty of actually bringing them through that transition time where if you go from the hourly to where things are now, and then down the road when you need to renegotiate that contract, they're starting to be too needy, or your rates have gone up after a couple of years, or whatever the case may be. Suddenly the magic number isn't so magic anymore, right? And you have to give them a new, more magic number. And then, they're kind of okay, what do I get for this new number? So yeah, that's a tough one too.
A more magic number. I think I'm going to use that.
How much magic do you want in your managed service contract? Abracadabra.
Well, most of you listeners know we have a long history with the ACES conference, and with Justin Escar, ACES is back for version 5.0. Coming up in 2019, ACES conference will be in Kansas City, Missouri, and the dates are June 4th to the 6th. I would highly encourage, if you've never been before, to at least take a look at ACES Conf and have a look at the speakers and at the lineup and what's available to you as a person attending the event. And of course, for our listeners of Command Control Power, we have a special URL that gets you 10% off the pricing, which is acesconf.com/CCP.
Excellent. Well, I guess we will leave it there. Sam and Weldon in Denver, Jerry in Connecticut, and Joe in California. This has been an awesome show. I just realized we're actually all in states that start with the letter C. So that's something.
How's that for a bit of trivia?
Thanks again, Weldon, for joining us and for all your support of Command Control Power. We, of course, really appreciate that, but it's even better to get a chance to talk to you. And on behalf of Sam, thanks for hosting 1/3 of Command Control Power there in Denver, and hope you guys have fun. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Just like shares it, as opposed to creating an album and manually dragging in and stuff too.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
No, you're asking too much, man. Well, I want shared contacts.
That would be nice. That would be really nice.
Is that too much to ask? I mean, we have shared calendars.
Usable
Let's
today.
not talk about we don't have shared contact. Let's talk about flogging a dead horse.
Talk about rehashing old material. Yeah, I guess
Let's
that's
talk
true.
about why Joe thinks he should get a new iPhone this week.
Yeah,
Let's revisit that subject again.
I heard the camera's pretty good.
Touche.
We were talking about that.
That's why he said it. He's a
All
big,
right.
He's our biggest
I got
fan.
something entirely new. Entirely new for everybody.
Are we
We're
starting?
recording, Yeah.
So
all right. So
could you
welcome.
make a
Yeah.
start?
Let's start.
Make a start sound.
Wow. So I'm going to welcome you, Weldon. So Weldon Dodd of Rewind Tech, right?
Yeah. Thanks.
Awesome.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't it, but we could use that.
That was a soft opening.
Yeah, that was a
We're gonna
soft
try that
welcoming. Yeah.
He was telling you he was
right.
going to welcome you.
You could do Joe. You know what? You could do like a Fred Rogers. We could have a little knocking. I could dub in that sound effect, and you could go, "Hey, who's at the door?" Let's see. Oh, it's Weldon Dodd. He came to visit in the neighborhood. Come on in, Weldon.
I think Jerry
it's
had
more
a couple
for,
beers.
Audio visual. Yeah, I'm wondering that too. The after dinner show. This is good. I like this. Jerry's in a rare form here.
Yeah, he is.
Let's see if it works as a pop filter. I'm not sure.
5x5.
Nice.
It could work as a mom filter.
Oh man, where's the drum and cymbals when we need it?
Yeah.